Okay, so the topic, as Pranita said, is technical agility driving the future innovation. So before we go into it, I would like to quote something that Steve Jobs said, that one thing I've always found is that you've got to start with customers' experience, their requirements, and work backwards from there. You can't start with technology. Right? We are in service industry, and our job is to provide solutions to the problem statements or the problem that the client has. It's not the other way around. We do not want to force fit the technology to a solution. And since the problems are different, the technology choice has to be different, and there's a continuous innovation in the work that we do. So, what do we understand by agility? Anyone?
Flexibility.
Flexibility.
Adaptability.
Adaptability, that's a good one. So,
it's a mindset to fail fast.
Mindset to fail fast, yeah, that's interesting.
So it's the speed, value, right?
Right, the speed with which you can change. Yeah.
Yeah, along with the value.
Yeah. So one of the definitions I found on the net at the source I've mentioned here, which was very relevant with what we do. It says it's the ways of planning and doing work in which it is understood that making changes as they are needed is an important part of the job. And that is what I'm going to talk about in the couple of slides that come. So to begin with, we went through actual job requirements for an SAP integration architect on one of the famous job sites. And we segregated out the requirements that are there in an ideal candidate. So the person and the ideal candidate in terms of SAP should know SAP process integration, smart data integration, all the SAP concepts of ABAP, RF, CPAP, IDOC, SmartForms, and a bunch of other things. In terms of concepts, the person must have a strong ERP architecture concept, OData, enterprise managing, enterprise messaging, enterprise data lakes, data intelligence, protocols such as SOAP, REST, SFTP. In cloud, an ideal candidate should know the SAP Cloud Platform Integration, the SAP Cloud Integration Gateway, must be well familiar with both AWS and Azure. In terms of languages and framework, the person needs to know Microsoft BizTalk, either Java or .NET, Spring Framework, JavaScript, JDBC, Python, XSLT, Java mapping. Soft skills is there for any project. And the third-party application tools mentioned were Salesforce, Workday, and ServiceNow. So now, if we look at this set of requirements, I'm not sure if they're trying to hire a person or they're trying to hire a department. Right? So, is this an unrealistic requirement? So we tried to map it. So we picked up an architect within Interra who is responsible for 2 projects. He's providing the architecture for 2 projects. And if we were to post a requirement for that, this is what it will look like. So the person needs to know Angular, Node, a bunch of third-party service acts. We have maps, you need to display maps, map addresses, error reporting is on Reagan, WalkMe for digital adoption platform, Swagger for documentation, Swipe for payment gateway, AWS, SPS. An ideal candidate needs to know all the authorization concepts and protocols such as SAML, OAuth, Passport, AWS concepts, Beanstalk server, server versus the concept of server versus worker process, how it is implemented, document DB. Since we do not have document DB in local, the MongoDB, static hosting, CloudFront, CloudWatch, load balancers, Cognito. I won't go through all of it, but I think you get the gist of it, that this again seems that we are posting the requirement for a department, not a person. But this is a real-time requirement for the person who is working. So is the person proficient in everything? No. The person is agile and the person has strong concepts and he can use that to work on all this. So we'll just go through a journey of through various years from start of a career till today, and look at some transition across projects and technologies. And this is a real life scenario. So, 1997, starting as a fresher. Now, the first project was something called as transaction processing facility. It's an operating system on mainframe specifically for airline reservations. It is capable of doing very simple, handling simple transactions, but high volume transactions. It can handle millions of transactions a second, and I'm talking about 97. So whole thing was about memory management concepts, inter-process communication, and all those types of some basic concepts. And the language, programming language was IBM Assembler. Within a year, the whole perspective shifted from high volume processing to a human resource management system. There were no longer blue screens or emulators to connect to the mainframe. It was Windows Forms, and to know about human resource management. But the base things that helped that person work on it was event-driven programming, data structures and algorithms, operating system concepts. The base concept remained the same as it was for the previous one. From HRMS, the perspective shifted to a finance ERP. This was all about billing, account payable, account receivables, general ledger. So the whole domain, like if you look at it from airline reservation to human resource management within a span of 3 years, to financial, you need to understand the whole finance domain, the bookkeeping very well if you have to work on this project. And the technology, the host of languages, assembler, COBOL, MQ series, JCL, and to add what you call icing on the cake, Walker had its own language, its own scripting languages. There was something called a transaction generator script, there was a report generator script. So a person needs to understand everything to work on it. 1919, and the next shift happened in 2003, where it was all about trade promotions. A highly visible software which handled over $300 million of trade promotions of the client. This was a distributed application, not a client-server application. Every user had the complete application on his or her laptop and with an access database. And there was a syncing mechanism which used to sync to a central database which was on Sybase, hosted on Unix. Then there was a shift in 2004 to supply chain planning. It was all about demand forecasting, inventory planning, replenishment, supply planning. I'm going to talk about this in a little more detail in the subsequent slides, but the whole focus shifted from finance to trade promotions to supply chain. And of course the technology changes as with every transition. And then there was financial reporting, where it was all about business intelligence. So from working on those applications, it was creating reports, working with the finance team, and Microsoft Analysis Services was something that was used. From there, in 2012, it was shifted to a portfolio manager. Now this is all about investments, stocks, options and commodities. I'm going to talk about this also in a little more detail. This was a very interesting project. Just quickly going through this is from 2012 to 2018, the focus shifted to robotic process automation, which is a completely different perspective on how to build your solutions. Coming to the current time, the two live projects that I've added here is one in this a product that is being developed for field service management, and we're using the full stack development, Beanstalk, MongoDB, everything is on AWS. And we have an application for sell-through analytics, and this, the reason I put him there is the perspective here is everything is about data. You need to understand the data, you need to know the tools to manipulate the data, whether it is Excel or a highly sophisticated tool like Pexata, which is also called Data Robot. So if you look at it, there is a lot of changes both in terms of domain and technologies that an IT professional has to go through. to provide solutions to the client and to work on these projects. So what enables? So I mean, seems like agility to a very an extreme extent. But what enables a person to work there? Now, in all these projects and all these domains and technologies, what was common? The concepts of data structures and algorithms, that was same everywhere, that never changed. Operating system concepts, the memory management, basic, I'm not talking about deep into memory management, we are not designing operating system, but the concepts of memory management, mutual exclusion, inter-process communication, that remained same, no matter what project we worked on. Event-driven programming, working with the events, the sequence of the events, how to handle them, and what can cause conflicts, that remained the same. The object-oriented programming concepts remain the same. And right now we talk a lot about machine learning and AI, and it is being used everywhere we see. I was just talking to one of the panelists here that if you tried your hands on the latest Visual Studio, it's kind of scary. It seems it's reading your mind. When you're coding, it will tell you, what you're trying to code. So what enables machine learning and AI? The base is statistics and mathematics. If you know that, it's very easy to pick up and work on machine learning. The tools with the improvement technology like TensorFlow from Google, you can create a neural network, a program within a matter of half an hour. You can create a program, a complete set of solution for that. But if you know the concepts. Now, taking this to a very entirely different thing, away from technology, I just started gymming some time back. So when I started, whenever I used to do any exercise, the trainer voice came from the back, "Sir, aap core engage nahi kar rahe." I used to try to do squats, "Sir, core." I tried to do a deadlift, "Sir, core." I tried to do a bench press, "Sir, core." Now, what was he trying to say? The point is, for any workout that you do, your core muscles are required for your body's stability and balance. If you do not have that, you cannot have a good workout. I mean, you can go to a certain extent, but beyond that, it will cause injury to your body. So, a strong core is required for us to be agile, even in physical sense. And same goes for IT. Another point I want to make here is that the change in technology is always there to make our lives easy. As a programmer, I'm talking from a programmer's perspective. It's never to complicate our lives. I'll take two examples here. Cloud is something that everything, so all the infrastructures, all the new clients that we're working, the complete infrastructure is on the cloud. And if you go specifically to AWS, serverless is an important thing. And AWS Lambda is a concept, right? Where we can write functions without worrying about the server, and we can configure based on our requirements, or it will scale based on what we need. Now let's imagine a person, a backend developer, let's pick up a language, let's say Node, a very strong developer in Node who has never heard or never worked on AWS. Suddenly we get a new client and that person has to work on AWS Lambda. How long do you think it will take that person to understand and pick up the technology? I mean, any guesses? So from my experience, it does not take more than 8 hours of dedicated effort, because all we need to do is understand how to use it, navigate our way across the console provided by AWS, where to put in the code, what are the different parameters. Once that is done, the remaining concepts remain the same. The person only needs to focus on providing the solution. Does not need to worry about CPU, does not need to worry about memory, or for that matter any other thing. So yes, an 8 hours of effort is definitely required, someone who is not aware, and this thing will change, tomorrow we'll have something else. But that said, the base concept will help that person work on it. Another example from the AWS, how many of us are aware of CloudWatch? So AWS CloudWatch is a facility which they give us to create logs. Now, logging Like I walked through a career progression from 97, and even if we go back to the college, we always create logs. And what does a log have? Log always has 4 components, right? We have a date, a severity, an error code, and an error message. This thing remains same, right? Even if you talk from, I was talking Karindam, he's been coding since 1982. Even if we come now, these are the 4 elements that are there. These do not change. But what CloudWatch has prevented us is it's given us a framework which we can easily create those logs. We can access those logs easily. It's given a query language on top of it, so we can analyze it to our heart's content. And how difficult it is to pick up CloudWatch. Maybe 8 hours, maybe 16 hours. So yes, that effort is required. You need to familiarize yourself with AWS. But once that is done, the core concepts remain the same. So technology is always there to make our life easy. So I'm going to, like all the projects that I just mentioned, I'll just pick a couple of projects and talk about what kind of agility was required. So this is about supply chain planning. So in the same area, exact same area, we've worked on 6 different projects. It's in the area of demand forecasting, inventory planning. So a very simple question, what do we understand by demand? Anyone? In terms of supply chain, like you're a retail store or you're a manufacturer, what is demand for you?
Requirement?
Requirement?
Need, basically.
Basic need?
Consumption.
Consumption? So demand, actually when we are forecasting, so demand is the quantity desired by a customer at a given time, at a given place. That's it. This is the basic. So, as an IT person, as a people providing, services or solutions to the customer, we don't need to forecast, but we need to understand what is demand. And demand is nothing more than this. So these are 6 projects in this area, and in the supply chain area, the data type is finite. We have master data, and rarely we go across product master, customer master, or warehouse. In rare projects we have master data beyond it. We have transaction data, which primarily 90% of the data comes from sales order, purchase orders, and deliveries. And the processing that we do on it is we group by periods, we find out the deltas, what are the net change. That's it. I mean, this is what I've mentioned is like 95% of the work that we do in these type of projects. So where is the agility requirement? Now, customer 1 had everything was on AS400. So the programming choice was RPG. They had homegrown application on AS400, so we had to extract, we have to work with DB2 to extract data from there. They had a robot scheduler. Second client, which again was implementing demand forecasting, supply planning, and they also happened to have SAP. They were a Windows shop, but they were using web methods. So they asked us, can you do it in web methods? Absolutely. So we had to pick up web methods in all those technologies. Schedulers, we worked on Robot, Control M, Unicenter, Windows Scheduler. I mean, our client did not want to buy a scheduler, so we said, okay, we'll do it on Windows Scheduler. Agreed, we need to learn all of them, we need to learn how to navigate and use them. But the scheduling concept, what is scheduling? You have a job, a set of parameters and a dependencies on it. If we can use that to create a schedule, we can do it in any of the schedulers. We need to be, so the base concept is scheduling, and the agility is required in picking up all those tools and the platform on which they are implemented. So the operating system, choice of languages programming is different. And what is also different from a domain perspective, same data means different thing for different customers. So I talked about demand, right? So one customer who had its own retail stores and also used to supply to large retail companies, they said that what my customer wanted is my demand. The customer wanted 100 items. I supplied 50, so I don't care about 50. I want to know what my customer wanted, because in the future I'd like to service all the demand that is there from a customer. Another client who was focusing on the supply side, but they had to do for forecasting to do a proper supply. Their forecast was, okay, what did I deliver to my customer? I'll use that as forecasting. So for the first customer, the requested order quantity became our demand. For the second customer, the delivered quantity became our demand. So we needed to be agile in terms of understanding what the same data means for different clients. Moving on to a different project. This was a very interesting project. What the client gave us, the set of requirements, the complete set of requirements that client gave us was, we want a portfolio manager. That's it. And what they also gave us, they had a patent on calculating cost basis. So they gave us access to their API, which calculated the cost basis. Technology was a sweet spot here, because they said, we don't care in which technology you build it. So we chose ASP.NET, C#, SQL, whatever we were strong in and whatever we had resources for, we picked it up. But the agility requirements came in the functional side. How many of you invest in stocks? And how many of you make money from stocks? Okay, I need to take classes from you. So this was all about stocks, options, commodities, futures, puts, calls, and not just, till that point, what a stock for me is, I buy something, if I sell it at a higher price, I get a profit, if I sell it at a lower price, I make a loss. But there is much more metadata related to stocks than this. There's a ticker, there's a inception date, there's a buy date, and a whole lot of other things. There are corporate actions. What does a split or a spin-off or a merger change, have impact on the quantities that you have? Because we are building a portfolio manager and it has to do everything automatically. We did not know anything about it. We had to pick it up. We had to read books and understand what are the different calculations. It was a good project. Good in terms of dollar value, good in terms of what we were building. So then we had to understand the tax laws. What is a wash sale? How do you calculate? Because at the end of the day, at the end of the year, end of the financial year, we had to create the complete form for the user which can be filed with the IRS. One of the biggest challenges at the start of the project was, okay, we've read the books, now we understand what is a stock. But to come up with an exhaustive data dictionary just to build our database, we cannot do a trial and error method. Right? So here, the innovation came from an existing protocol to OFX. It's Open Financial Exchange, which we were using to, so if let's say if you're a user, you have an account in multiple banks, you would connect to all the banks and get the data. To do that, we have OFX. So now since OFX is getting the financial data, it has to have all the elements in it. Right? So we picked up the OFX schema, it was an XML schema, we used that and we created a database from there. So the database first approach here was kind of by requirement, less as an architectural choice, even though we may like to call that, but it was more a requirement because that is how we started working on it. This was a successful delivery. So in the first one, the domain was not a problem. Technology, the change in technology, same work across multiple clients, but the technology changes. Here, technology is not a problem, but the domain and understanding, complete understanding of the domain and the calculations is where we needed agility. The next thing is robotic process automation. It's an entirely different perspective to develop solutions. So what do we understand by robotic process automation? Can anyone explain?
It's basically whatever human is taking actions, through automation, those same actions can be repeated.
Correct.
Like
yes.
a mundane job or a repeated job by everyone. Yeah.
So I had a very unique experience on what some people understand with robotic, especially non-technical. All of us here are in technical field. So we were doing a project for a government client overseas. I think one person in the audience was there at a kickoff meeting. And Kapil, would you like to share when you had that kickoff meeting, what people said, what was their understanding of RPA?
Sure, Saransh. So
when I was there, kickoff meeting just happened, and my team was setting up their machine in a conference room where we need to start the work. So people was curious to know what is the robots, because when we think about the robot, everyone think about a physical machine which is walking or talking or doing something. So everyone entered in my room and asked one question: where are robots? And how would they look like? So the difference between robotics process automation and robots, because when a non-technical person or a normal who doesn't know the technology think about robot, he will always think about a physical machine nowadays. But it is going to change, which is called robotics process automation. Thank you.
So, robotics process automation. So, why do we have robotics? So, is it robotic? Yes and no. No, because we don't have a physical, as Kapil mentioned, we don't have a physical robot that is coming and doing. No one is going to type for you, and at the end of the day, it's an executable running on your system. But why is it a robot? As you just mentioned, we are mimicking human action, right? We are entering data into the screen what a normal human will do. So yes, it is robotics. So that is why this is called robotic process automation. Now, this changes the complete perspective, because we were used to traditional software development. Here, we have to think what a human would do, what are the mundane tasks that a human does, and replicate that. The challenges and everything change. For example, things like error handling, right? We all do error handling in our code, whatever we develop. But here, your perspective has to be on the UI. If the UI developer left a bug in the UI, it's your problem. Because if you don't take care of that bug, your automation will fail. So the agility requirements here are, we have host of applications. It's not one application. There might be 10 different applications which you are trying to automate. And it's a call center. Like for example, someone who is working in a call center, they typically handle 4 to 5 different applications. And if we are making a console for them, it has to talk to all the 5 applications and automate that workflow. So application changes, and the application may be hosted on your machine, which is the best scenario, or it may be hosted on a Citrix or a remote desktop. So let's say it's on a Citrix, we make our application and we find out, let's say, at a position of X and Y and a length of L and width of W gives us the invoice number. We created, we tested it thoroughly, rigorously, and implemented it. But when it went to the customer, Mr. Customer decided, or Madam Customer decided to change the display monitor, and the resolution is now different. So our application fails. It will not work there. So that is where the tools like UiPath, Pega, these come into the picture. So yes, the agility is required to understand UiPath. We need to spend maybe a month or maybe 2 or 3 weeks to understand and pick up UiPath. But once we've picked up these problems like Citrix, which I'm talking about, it automatically takes care of you. It's a configuration. Once we do it, it will automatically take care of screen resolution changes and all those type of things. OCR, machine learning concepts now, in robotic process automation, there are a lot of projects which require OCR. And an OCR without a machine learning sometimes makes the project cost prohibitive. So machine learning, a basic learning of machine learning is required. You may not need to code anything, but you need to know what is machine learning and how OCR fits in there. And as I said, it's a different perspective. Our solution is highly dependent on the user interface and what a user might do. So different from a traditional approach. So moving to robotic process automation, the agility was required in the way you think of implementing software. It's not a traditional software development that like for example, what I am used to. It was different, but it was software development nonetheless. So the last one I'll just quickly skip through in the interest of time. This project is all about data. Our client has an application which gives sell-through analytics. The data needs to be refreshed every day. When we got the project, the challenge was that the client was using Pexata, a very sophisticated tool for data manipulation and working with data. But the process of running it was highly manual, and we could not afford to make mistakes because the data had to be available for the next day. We had a window, and the process took about 13 to 14 hours. And our job took about 3 to 5 hours, depending on the day and the type of data. And it was not in the client's interest to automate it because automation cost was quite high. So that challenge also gave us an opportunity that if we are agile, if we can provide some innovative solution to the customers, we can grow the business. So we had a small window of opportunity opened, and in the week's time, we had to pick up a second process. I mean, it was data normalization, which is working in messaging data, and then it was data ingestion, which was the ingestion into the sell-through analytics. We had to pick up the second process and to add it to our problems of 1 week transition. They had implemented something new in production and it failed. To the extent that the system went down, it was down for 2 weeks. Now, it was difficult, but it was an opportunity for us to pick up the whole thing. We got it working in 2 weeks. They got the confidence in us. We used that to remove their manual process. So the process which took 3 to 5 hours now runs in 10 minutes. Now, what helped us in doing this? See, at the end of the day, this whole thing, if you look at from the base concept, is ETL, extract, transform, load. Same concept. Since it was AWS, we used AWS Glue. Yes, we had to learn AWS Glue and we had to implement it. But the base concept, we have done numerous integrations in our past, so that helped us implement it. So now if I go back to the very first requirement, this is actually not unrealistic. This is what a person might be touching across when he or she is working on the project. So we need to be agile if we have a strong base, we can be agile in picking up all these technologies and working on it. We may not be expert in all of them, but we will know enough so that the project gets through. And mind you, once we move from clients to client, the requirements are only going to add up. So I want to finish this with the conclusion that being agile in terms of picking up technology and keeping pace with it is a key requirement if you want to find innovative solutions, right? We provide solutions, we work with the problem statement and we find the best technological fit. So we have to be agile with technologies. But if we have strong core concepts, that is the ingredient that will help us to be agile. Thank you.